Unturned Stones. On today's episode, I'm going to be interviewing George Opelt. George is somebody I've known you now, I think, for maybe 10 years, right? Because I think
close there.
I met you right when I first started coming to Winter's Edge.
Yep.
You were coming there with all the other high school guys at that time.
Yep. I've been there since 13.
Yeah. So it has been 10 years.
Oh, yeah.
So it's been that long, and we weren't necessarily super close through most of that time or anything. Like, we've always kind of known each other through Winter's Edge. Not like we haven't had much personal time, but we've always connected whenever we talk at the gym. And I think you're somebody who I've enjoyed seeing your own journey, kind of going from a high school kid. Not that I was much older than you at the time, even when I first started coming, but I think you were still in high school when I...
1 year, it was my first year out of high school.
Okay,
first winter out.
Yeah, so there was still like just that, like, okay, you're like a little younger. I think I was fresh out of college. And at that time, that age difference feels big. It was cool to like see you develop and like go through like your last 10 years. So it was, you came up with that idea of talking to you, especially because I think your career choice and the mental health things that kind of revolve around your career choice of being a police officer is something I'm very excited to talk to you about and hear your perspective on. So just to kick off the podcast, tell people a little bit about yourself, like where you're from, what your childhood was like, just little details, and we can go from there.
All right, like John said, my name is George Opelt. I born and raised in Milwaukee, Tulsa for the first 5 years of my life, and then moved out to Pewaukee. All my cousins and family were out there. So made the move out there. Lived with mom and grandma for most of my life. Dad wasn't much in the picture, which I didn't know any different. So growing up, had its challenges. We can delve into those a little bit, but for the most part, went to Pewaukee since first grade, graduated there. During my time there, football, baseball, typical normal guy growing up shit. Enjoyed my time there. A lot of that, who I became today, is because of my friend group and coaches and whatnot through there. And then moved on to WCTC, where I followed my dreams of being a cop, where I've been in law enforcement now for 8 years, started in New Berlin and finally made it to Tulsa, which was my dream department. So fun time there. So
yeah. And currently your relationship status?
Yep. So it's just married to a wonderful woman named Bryn. We met a couple years ago, in 21. If I fucked that up, sorry. She's been fantastic. Brought me through a lot of journey, emotional maturity, as emotionally mature as I thought I was. Speaking with her, not anywhere near where I need to be. Still, obviously, always growing, but she's brought me a long way. So I got lucky.
How old are you now?
20, just turned 29 in February.
Okay.
Yep. And we just got married in December. We is kind of rushed. Graham's has had lung cancer for the last 10 years, wasn't active, and then finally turned active in November, 1 to 3 months to live. It was very important for, especially me and Bryn, to have her see that, and very important for her to see us get married. So we came up with a quick courthouse wedding, so she got to see it. And then, unfortunately, she passed away a week later in the week of Christmas, which is unfortunate, but it was her time to go. So
she got to celebrate with you guys a little bit, though.
Yep.
Okay.
So crazy turn. Cancer works in funny ways. So the day of our wedding, you would have never guessed she had cancer or anything like that. And then dropped her doses of steroids, and then it kind of took its course. Yeah. So.
Well, at least she was there.
Oh, yeah.
That's a very special day for your wife to like want her there for, and that's huge.
Oh, yeah. So I'm very, very grateful for Bryn, because, most girls growing up have their picture perfect wedding and whatnot, and for her to sacrifice that for me and my family, I can't.
Yeah, that's huge. Yeah. I mean, that type of support is not, it's not support you can take lightly, because it has such a profound, deep meaning.
Oh, yeah. So, I mean, I'll never be able to repay it back to her. So I'm just always grateful for that. She knows that. Yeah.
Okay. So to kind of dig back here a little bit. So your dad wasn't around when you were young. Was he like around for any part of younger years?
Him and my mom met while working at a restaurant years ago back in the day. He immigrated from Mexico as a 14-year-old. The typical, my uncle, his older brother was already here, and then his parents sent him over here when he was 14, didn't speak the language, jumped the border, came to work, send money back home to the family. And so they met, did the normal hookup kind of stuff as people in restaurants do. And along came me, and he did his best, right? I mean, being 14 years old, sent over to a different country, not knowing English language, just working, and then have a kid at the age of 18. You only been in a different country for 4 years, and then try to be a dad. He did his best. He came around younger. When in my younger days, it was about every like school break, I'd go up there for the week because he lived up in Stevens Point, and then when he got to high school, moved to New Mexico, so I didn't see him for 3 or 4 years, barely talked to him, and then showed up randomly at one of my senior football games, and then telling him, which was kind of cool to see. But
it wasn't hard. It was like you did appreciate it.
Yeah.
Moment. Okay. And in hindsight, you still appreciate it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So I mean, sometimes it's a little difficult looking back in. Maybe my younger days, I wish he would have been there more. But now that I'm more older and realize, obviously, I don't have kids, so I don't know how difficult it is yet. But coming from a different country, I can't imagine being in his shoes, having a kid 4 years after being 18, barely knowing language, and then try to be a father on top of it, right? So,
yeah. So do you guys still talk now?
Yep. I wouldn't say we're very close. It's birthdays, holidays, kind of random texting calls and whatnot. There's been a lot of promises and empty promises that have never been fulfilled, so it's kind of hard to see that, and that was probably the most difficult part of it, but also it's something I always knew and always kind of expected. So, yeah. But on the other side of it, my mom and Grams did a fantastic job raising me and overcoming that, and they never passed judgment down on him or made it the fuck him or held me back.
So do you feel like that's a big reason why maybe, like, do you think, did you ever have resentment as a kid that he wasn't around? Was there ever any feeling of that or like anger?
No, not resentment or anger. I think it's mainly because Mom and Graham said he does his best. He loves you. He just doesn't. It's part of the way he was raised is that way. So they did a good job keeping me objective about it, not emotional.
So they communicated this at a young age where they were kind of very clear that like, your dad being around has nothing to do with your self-worth or what love he might have for you. It has more to do with his own challenges.
Yep.
So do you like remember that? Like, do you remember this conversation?
Oh, yeah.
Like, how old were you?
God. I think I've been told that since 4 or 5 or ever. Whenever you start remembering what your parents tell you, it's been, as far as I remember, it's your dad loves you. He'll be there for you if you need. It's just distance, school, life, and just the way he was raised is unfortunately.
How do you think your mom was able to not hold resentment towards him and still be able to, tell you that he loved you and speak? It seemed like, I don't know highly, but she spoke obviously in a way that didn't make you think negatively of him.
No. I think it's just a testament to my mom's will and her emotional maturity and just her maturity and love overall, because that's just the person she is. She's a saint. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Being a single mom, raising me, no child support, wasn't really there. Sometimes it was, sometimes it wasn't consistent. It would have been very easy for her to, your dad doesn't do this, your dad doesn't do that, you don't get to see him. But the bigger person in her said, no, he still loves you, he just doesn't know any better, and it's not your fault. So I think that was the big thing, and she still did. I always called her Mad growing up, mom and dad, because she played the mother role, and not only she'd go out in the backyard, play football, baseball, and all those things dad would do, she did too. So I didn't know any different, and she didn't let me feel any sort of way about it.
I mean, she sounds like an incredible woman.
Oh yeah,
and a very resilient one.
Yep.
Do you have siblings?
2 half brothers.
2 half brothers.
Yep. Okay. So my dad moved up to Stevens Point, younger age, and then he met his now ex-wife, but mother of my 2 half brothers up there, and their names are Rick and Carlos. Not as close with them as I probably should be, but part of that is just distance and life and whatnot. So
so with your mom, it is just you and your mom as far as like there's no other siblings from your mom then?
No.
So for you and your mom, that relationship really was, you were such a close relationship for her. She probably poured everything into you.
Oh yeah.
I mean, everything.
Yeah, she poured everything into me. I poured everything into her. She's my mom, but growing up, she was more of kind of a friend more than anything. So normal, typical mother-son relationship. It's not, I don't even consider it like that. It's like a true friendship, whether it was all the driving me to soccer tournaments, baseball tournaments, whatever, a lot of time in the car. So we've grown to be very, very close.
That's awesome.
Yep.
Do you still, like, do you, in your adult life, go see her often?
Yep.
As, you know?
Yeah, so I actually stopped before this. I had a little bit of time between my haircut and gym, and then coming here, I went over there and talked to her for 10, 15 minutes and then rolled out. So she lives, so gym's in Pewaukee. I grew up in Pewaukee. Her house is only 5 minutes from the gym. So I was like, I got 20 minutes away, so I'll go say hi. And then came out here. So yeah, it's still call her most days on my way to work, just see what's up and how things are. So it's still very cool relationship we have, I would say.
Yeah. Now, she sounds like she was a wonderful influence on you from an emotional maturity point of view, without a doubt. Now, did you, and as much as she could have played a mom and dad role for you, did you still seek masculine influence and a masculine, like, advice from somebody, you know? Was there anybody like that? And I mean, it sounds like you played a lot of sports, like you had coaches always.
Yep.
So you kind of always had like male figureheads.
Yep. So then living with mom and Grams, both did a very good job playing the motherly and fatherly role. Grams was awesome. She's the same thing as mom, but Grams was more the strict father figure of the household. Mom was the more kind of motherly. She was still strict too, but Grams was the rock in the family, and she kind of held that more fatherly role. But yeah, so I had to find my, I guess you could say, male influences outside of the in-home, right? The nuclear family, just the way it was. So I had two great uncles, Uncle Randy and then Uncle Michael, who were my role models growing up. And Uncle Randy's my godfather, and he's always been the first one to take care of us and whatnot. So they were very good growing up. He's very religious in the church. So up until high school, middle school, when sports started to become 24/7 weekends, I'd go to church and Bible studies with him, and then his two daughters, Jessie and Maggie, my cousins, and then Uncle Michael, and they were always there growing up, telling me what to do or showing me certain ways, like, this is what the man of the house does. You're there to protect your mom and grandma. If anything happens, it's on you, or this is what a man should do, or how he should act. And then more so, I would say high school. My high school football coach was probably the more setting factor of that. Coach Iverson, he really is probably the one that instilled the harder work ethic and control what you can, and don't let shit you can't control affect you. And that's probably what stuck with me the most.
Like him instilling those types of lessons on you, which is like, you know, you get those lessons a lot in like the military and in the law enforcement.
Yep.
And it's because guys like that follow those lessons very well. They like those lessons. They objectively view them as something that's really, you know, leaning into.
Yep. So one of the things that always sticks with me, we had it posted on our weight room, is no excuses, no apologies. So you got to put in the work. You got to love the work, right? Your reward for being able to play on Fridays nights is the hard work and preparation you do Sunday through Thursday to go play those games on Friday. And instead of looking at the sprints as, oh, fuck, these suck, think of it as, this is going to make the game that much easier, right? You go through hell that week to make the game just an easy road then.
Yeah. Now, did you feel like you had to play, your uncles taught you about playing this like man of the house role. Did you feel like you played that, like you started taking that role on in younger years at all, or no?
Yeah, and it was more so because mom and grams also emanated that, right? They're very traditional.
Yeah.
Man is the protector, the women, whatever else. And then started at a very young age too, because in first grade there we'd be out playing, whatever else. And then some of the boys would be bullying and picking on the girls, and I protected the girls and went against all my buddies in first grade for that. And I think that's all started because of my uncles, mom, and grandma, and whatnot, because they protect women and children and protect from bullying and whatnot. So
okay. And now you mentioned your friend group having a big influence on you. Is that like from like the boys and like, you know, having male friends influence because of having more like male influence in your life because of male friends? Because like, it's, you know, you didn't have a brother or like a dad where you got more of that male influence like in the younger years. Like, where do you feel like that big influence for you came with the big friend group?
So Pewaukee is I I love their campus, and I think it's a unique campus when you go to elementary school, because all the elementary, middle school, and high school are all on the same campus, and you start on one side, and it's a big U. So you start Pewaukee Lake Elementary is on one side of the U, and then you move your way over to Horizon, which is 4th through 6th, and then Asa Clark, which is middle school, 7th and 8th, and high school. So you grow up playing sports and with all your classmates from 1st grade, and you do that whole journey together in the same campus and the same building. So just being able to be part of the same friend group from since 1st grade of 5, 6, 10 guys that are all still super close. We all still talk and hang out whenever we can. So I think that was a big influence in just being able to grow together and go through our journeys.
So kind of always having this social group that was like a stability for you in your life, that you always had these friends that no matter what was happening, you probably always had something to do with them or some fun to be had with them.
Yep. There's always, we all grew up playing the same sports, sleeping over at each other's houses. There'd be times in summers, especially 6th through even high school, I wouldn't sleep in my own bed for a week. We'd all be at each other's different houses and whatnot. So just that is also a cool experience. And I know that's rare for people to go through, and people lose friends as they grow out of high school, but we've all stayed super close and whatnot. So I think that's partially because of the way Pewaukee's set up with their campus, and you grow together all on the same campus. It's not, oh, I went to this middle school or I went to this elementary school, and then you just join in high school. You're with the same people since kindergarten and 1st grade.
Yeah. And I think I might have had I know at least one other guest, I believe another guest who's talked about this, where they had a group of friends that they've known from a young age. And like you said, it's not very common, but the guys who have it seems like it's been such a massive difference maker for them, and like the ability to always have this group that they relied on. And, for us men, like we feel the need to be part of something.
Yep.
And whether that's a sports team or that's part of even just like your job, you're part of a team in your department or your job, wherever it is. But like being part of a social group is like such a big desire for us. We want to be accepted by other men. So to have like a group like that you like felt you all accepted each other and you grew up together, I think that's like so massive.
Oh, yeah.
I think so many guys need that just don't get it, because a lot of schools don't have it set up like that. Like you said, you feed in from so many different elementaries into the middle schools, different middle schools feed into the high schools, that it's disjointed, where it sounds like Pewaukee has a setup that kids really do.
Oh, yeah.
And for Pewaukee being as big as it is, too.
Yep. So it's gotten bigger since I left there. I mean, my graduating class was 140, which was on the smaller end. But, yeah, just that ability to grow up with the same people. And
yeah, 140 is on the smaller end.
Yeah,
okay, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, everyone knew each other in a small town we're living, right? So everyone knew each other's bullshit and rumors and whatnot. There's not many secrets. So just be able to have that and go from there. And I know those guys, we don't talk as often as we used to, obviously, just because of life and kids and marriages and whatnot. But I know those core group of 5 guys I could throw in a group chat and be like, hey, I have this going on. Any of you willing to help? And they take their shirt off their back, or they'd be like, yeah, we'll be there first thing in the morning. Or if they're even halfway across the country, they'd be like, I'll be there fucking tomorrow or the next day. So just to have that support group is fantastic. And I know it's rare.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's the type of guys where you probably don't need to talk to them for 2 years, and you could talk like that, and you just pick back up.
Yep. So as cliche as it is, I know they're not. We don't talk much, maybe as much as we used to, but as soon as I need something or they need something, we're all there.
So post high school, did a lot of guys like go off in different directions or no?
So we had a couple went to Whitewater, a couple went to Oshkosh, and then a couple out-of-state schools. But for the most part, even being separate in college, we were still super close. And right, so I stayed at home. I lived at home because I went to CTC to be a cop, right? And so that was an interesting challenge, because you see all your good buddies go off to college, living the dorm life, partying, drinking, doing the normal college shit, and I'm at home working, whatever else, which is fine. It's what I wanted to do. Partially, I had to mature a lot sooner in life because of just the cards that were dealt to me, which I'm very thankful for, because it got me into my career a lot sooner. Learned some life lessons at a young age that catapulted me into being able to achieve my dream that much sooner. And I loved my college time. I wasn't really made for the college dorms. I wasn't a very good student in high school. I graduated 2.7 GPA, mainly because a lot of the classes in high school don't apply to what I do now, right? geometry, trigonometry. I'm not using sans, cosine, whatever, tans, whatever that is, right? I knew that. It's shitty. I shouldn't have used it as an excuse to be like, I don't fucking need this class. But, so normal college wouldn't have gone very well. I wouldn't have did homework. I may have even flunked out. So it was very good that I made that decision at a young age to go to CTC and go right into my career with teachers that work in the field versus someone who just got their bachelor's in criminology and is teaching it from a textbook without that real life experience.
Yeah. Do you feel like a lot of your friends and just a lot of just people in general who you saw kind of go off to college after high school, do you feel like a lot of them got into college, got a degree that they utilized after college right away too, or no?
For the most part, I mean, my friend group's also very tight-knit. We're a bunch of type A, very motivated type people. So whatever their degree was is what they're using, right? So, and I know that's also another rarity thing too, is there's a lot of people that don't use they go to college for one thing and they never use it again. So my friend groups were in that way where a couple of them went engineers, and they're engineers at Milwaukee Tool Business. One guy's doing a trade show. He does trade show booths at Catalyst down in Kenosha, and that's what he went to school for, business, marketing, whatever else, and then finance stuff. So they've all lined up with it. So I'm very happy for them for that, because I can't imagine going to school for 4 years and then getting into whatever line of work you thought you were going into and being like, oh, fuck, I hate this. What am I going to do next?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Now, I'm assuming like you probably have like a high opinion of like trade work as well and stuff like that, and trade school and apprenticeships. So do you think like someday you probably want to have kids? I'm assuming. So do you think would you push your kids more towards college or trade school, or because, and I'm asking this question from the point of view of you, it felt like not going to college, living in the dorms, kind of, and I will agree. I mean, I lived in a dorm in college. First couple of years were really just, school stuff got done. I got into internship stuff too, but like it was a lot of it was socialization, it was drinking, it was partying. And with that being said, I still wasn't even a crazy partier. A lot of kids were worse than me, but so sometimes I think to myself, like, do I want to push kids to go to college just because I think it's a standard that they should do, or is college just a thing now we expect out of everybody? And it's, at the end of the day, like you kind of fuck off for a couple of years before you take it seriously and you get down to business. And like your last 2 years, you take serious classes for your major. So like, for you now, based off your experience and that opinion, do you think you'd want to push your kids one way or the other?
So the answer right now would be I would push more towards tech school and trade, just because you get into real life sooner. You can go to school for 2 years and have not $250,000 of fucking school loans for a job that's paying $50,000 a year, where you could go to CTC for 2 years and do tool and die and make $100,000 after 2 years, or plumber or whatever else. And those are jobs that make America work and make life work, is plumbing, infrastructure stuff. Business has its role too, but right now I push more for kind of more probably realistic or hands-on stuff. But college is also important. I don't think it should be free. I also don't think it should be $250,000 to fucking go to school for 4 years and never be able to pay that off.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, the problem is not that America needs free college tuition. The problem is that college shouldn't be as expensive as it is.
No.
There's all these statistics about the number of administrators per student has gone up substantially over the years, which is the reason that administration costs have gone so high for colleges, even though they're offering the same classes.
Yeah.
The books are being revved up over the years, but they're offering the same curriculums for the most part,
Yeah.
But nope, it's way more administrators, so they're charging you this absurd number. But
I mean, it takes probably $4 billion to run a university. I mean, they gotta make up the money somehow, right? But I don't know what the answer is. That's way above my head.
Yeah,
I became a cop for a reason. It's not because I'm good at math or science or anything like that. So
So what made you decide cop? When did you know you wanted to be a cop?
Okay, this is gonna be the probably corniest story you've ever heard.
Let's hear it.
But it's what ignited my passion. So, we were living on 94th and Capitol, and we had an upper, lower duplex. And I think overall, there's some cops that are just born to be cops, and I believe I was one of that, just because that's what I've always wanted to do. But what really set it in was our landlord was kind of an asshole, and so there was some argument between my mom and him, and then hot as hell, and it was summer or whatever else. He must not like the way we were taking care of the cats or something along those lines. So one day he turned the heat up to like 90 degrees when it was already 90 degrees outside. The cats were sweating. We were sweating like it's whatever. Because he had control of the thermostat, and it was one of those thermostats, old buildings that thermostats in the common hallway, so only the landlord could change it, right?
Yep.
And so he's being a dick about it. Obviously, my mom confronts him about it because I'm 4 or 5 years old. She has 2 cats, and fucking ridiculous to turn that up, whether
Probably
for whatever argument
illegal.
is. Yeah, obviously illegal. So he gets in her face. My uncle comes over, tries to do the same thing. He swings at my uncle and my mom, and I'm out playing with my car, and I see all this. And at the same time, she called the cops because he was escalating, whatever else. So 2 Milwaukee cops show up as he's swinging at mom and my uncle, and they take him away and arrest him, right? So I always say that day I became a cop because before that, my superheroes were Batman, Superman, stupid shit, right? And then it wasn't Batman or Superman that came to save the day that day. It was 2 cops in blue uniforms and black boots, as I always say, that came and saved the day. So that's the day I always say I became a cop, right? Because mom was in trouble, uncle was in trouble, and who came to save the day? It was 2 cops, 2 Milwaukee cops that were always in the neighborhood and whatever else. So they came and saved the day, arrested him, and I saw that as a 4 or 5-year-old kid, and that's what stuck with me, and that's what's been my motivation ever since.
Is it crazy to think back and be like, that's like one memory?
Yeah.
Like shape your decision on like what you wanted to do in your career?
Yeah, something 14, now 18 years old, going into WCTC for law enforcement for something 14 years ago hasn't changed.
Wow. Yeah. Just one memory like that. Yeah. You saw it and your brain just clicked.
Yep.
And that's it.
That's
it was
the day.
set.
I always say that's the day. And before that too, those same 2 cops, it's back in the day when they used to hand out business cards. So I had my big wheel. It was a police big wheel with lights and sirens on it. And they always were at 100th and Capitol at Lucky's, which is like, was an ice cream burger shop, whatever else. They'd always be there, and they'd give me baseball cards every day. Whether I'd show up every fucking day, and they'd give me a different pack of cards every day, and the same kid, whatever else. And they were always very nice and whatever else from what I remember. So
in high school, when like the time started coming up that counselors would bring up college, did they pressure you into trying to apply to college? Or did was it like you were so hard intent on it that they knew that there was, it wasn't like you should consider other choices. You should apply just in case, it was, they left you alone. They knew what your decision was.
Yeah, so I didn't even really interact with our guidance counselors that much. Obviously, junior year, they were talking about colleges and what I want to do. And everyone knows since first grade, I've been saying, I'm going to be a cop, I'm going to be a cop, I'm going to be a cop, and mostly SWAT. So, which, lucky to be part of the SWAT team on our department right now too. But yeah, growing up, that was always the intent. And they're like, they gave me options, right? They said you can go to a 4-year, get your bachelor's in criminal justice, you don't have to worry about it again, or you can go to WCTC, do an associate's degree, and if you need your bachelor's in the future, you're going to have to go back. So it's really up to you to decide, do you want to go back maybe in the future, or do you want to just get it over with in the beginning? And then another thing I had to contend with, I could have played football at either Carroll or Concordia, which definitely wouldn't have been very good for me because I always put sports ahead of school. Part of the reason why I struggled in high school, and I'm somehow at the age of 17 made a decision. I'm not smart enough to do both, so I have to choose one or the other, and that's why I chose a tech school.
Okay.
So
how close was that decision to flipping the other way?
I think it was I was leaning towards going to Carroll or Concordia, and then all of a sudden I just woke up one day and was like, I can't fucking do that. Okay. I'm not going to go pay and be $100,000 in debt to fuck up school. So
you would have just cared about football.
Yeah.
Very concentrated on football.
Yeah, I would have been football, girls, drinking. That's all it would have fucking been, was all of that. And then school would have been to the wayside. And then probably wouldn't even made it 2 years in college, normal college.
Do you feel like you always had that level of awareness?
Yeah, a little bit. I think it's because my parents raised me to always know yourself and make the right decisions even when it's tough. And when not, I've always been more self-aware than I think some of my peers, just because of the way I was raised. So that was a big part of it, was self-awareness, and drove me to that. And then knowing I wanted to be a cop for 14 years at that point. I didn't want to wait any longer. I'm not very patient. So I was like, why prolong anything that I can do? I could be out in 2 years in academy and then be a cop by the age of 21. And that way you get to retire sooner and everything like that. Obviously, I'm not thinking about that when I'm 21. I was like, I just want a badge and a gun and go arrest all the bad guys in the world. But it allowed me to get there sooner.
So, because I meet guys like you every so often, and they're guys I enjoy having conversations with. There's guys who are always like, they think of the future. They think about how their decisions impact the future. They're always very aware of them, and they prioritize making smart decisions so that their future is set up better. And I find a lot of times like those guys are like that because maybe their parents had those conversations with them at a younger age. For some reason, they got instilled some lessons that like you can't always just live in the moment. You got to think about how the consequences to the actions that you're gonna do. And I think it's such a like stark difference between what I don't just want to even say men. I think people who look at their future and always think about it and plan for it, and that the fact that like as an 18-year-old boy you can make a very smart decision if you were just at a younger age at some point told that like your consequences have, you know, there's consequences to everything you decide, whether those consequences are good or bad. Like, and to be 18 years old and to choose, like, I'm not going to do the fun thing to go play football at a college where there's going to be girls and drink. But no, I'm going to follow this pursuit of like the long-term plan I kind of always had. And even though I could probably still go back to a cop after going to college, no, like that takes a level of awareness that you don't usually expect out of high school kids and 18-year-old boys. That I think it's refreshing to hear guys had those experiences. And I think there's value to like teach other men that. To like help teach like the young generation that more. Because I'm sure that's guided you through your life a lot.
It has. And then what really hit it too is, so all my close buddies were going to Oshkosh. I really wanted to go to Oshkosh, and then mixed with my GPA, I need to get a higher score on ACT, right? Wasn't going to happen because I took the ACT 3 times. I got 19 every time because I focused on what I need to improve from the first one. Those would skyrocket, but then the other subject would fucking just go to the wayside, right? And I can never just put it all together. Like, if I could combine all 3 of my best from my ACT, it probably would have been like a 23 or something, but I just could never put it all together for one fucking time, right? So with Oshkosh, even going to Oshkosh, they said, okay, with your GPA, you need to get at least a 23 ACT, and then you might get in. So that was kind of hard, but then also I did my research to know the difference between WCTC's associate program and 4-year degrees in criminal justice, right? And I liked, what drove me was most of the tech college professors are either current cops or retired cops, right? You're getting that real life experience, and they have to teach off a textbook and curriculum, but they have the knowledge to be like, okay, the textbook is saying this is the textbook way, but this is how you can apply it in real life.
Or this is what happens in real life.
Yeah, this is what happens. Textbook can say this, but great, this is what fucking happens on the road, so this is how you apply it and go from there.
So, getting into your career, you know, finishing up WCTC, what was it like for you kind of getting to, like, you know, because you still do the academy after WCTC, and then you kind of get put into like the first role, because like at that point you apply to departments. No, sorry, let me rephrase that question. Because when you do the academy is for a specific city, right?
No, so it depends. So I did my associate degree at WCTC, which was a great time. Their program's 2.5 years, and I made it 2 years because my last semester I took 23 credits.
And is that all that time? Is that like strictly like written material? You know, like all book learning?
Yep. So it's this still somewhat normal college learning. You have the good thing is the associate program's like your last 2 years at a bachelor's degree, right? You're strictly in your major classes. So like right from the get-go, I had intro to criminal justice, intro to security, and even forensics, and then your typical gen eds, math, English, whatever. But typical book learning. And then what really helped me too was my last semester, they want you to do an internship as part of to get your degree. So you got to find a department to do an internship with.
Paid or unpaid?
Huh?
Is that paid or unpaid?
Unpaid. So it's a volunteer basis. It's unpaid. PDs don't have money to pay their interns, they don't need to be anyway. I mean, you're there to learn. They're giving you the privilege to come and see what being a cop is like. So you shouldn't get paid for it anyway, right?
Yeah.
But if you want to do it bad enough, it's not about the money. No one goes into law enforcement for the money anyway.
Yeah.
So, and then lo and behold, I got my internship at Tulsa. So like somewhat part of it, I don't know if I was meant to be at Tulsa or not because I grew up in Tulsa right outside of there. Short little stint at New Berlin, which was a great PD, but got my internship at Tulsa. Small world with that. I applied there the first time, didn't get it. And then one of the buddies that grew up next to me, his dad is best friends with the internship coordinator at Tulsa, so that's how I got in.
Okay.
So kind of very small world, right?
Had a small connection there.
Yeah, small connection. So got in, loved my time there, learned a lot. And so that internship class, all these other guys and girls are at different PDs, and Tulsa's a happening place. So I always had the fun stories in class. We'd meet every Friday at 12:30 for an hour, and it was either the guys I was at, it was me and another girl at West Allis. So it would be West Allis and Tulsa had all the cool stories, right? So that opened up my world a lot. And then go to academy that following fall, and I put myself through. So academy, you can either get sponsored or you put yourself through back in the day. So I didn't apply to any prior departments because a lot of them require you to be 21. And I went through academy when I was only 20.
Okay. And how do you get sponsored if you were to get sponsored?
So you get hired by a department, then they put you on scholarship essentially through academy. So if I was 21, I could apply to PD and say, hey, I don't have academy yet, but I want to work for you. And then if you do well enough in that process, they'll say, okay, we want you, we like you, we're going to put you through academy, and then you're going to start as a cop by us after you finish academy.
Whereas you can just join and pay for your own academy.
Yep. So that's what I did. And partially because it was due to age, I wasn't even old enough to apply anywhere. Besides New Berlin, which opened up when I started academy. Then academy is a written eval or written submission, then you have a panel interview. And still very competitive. And since I went to CTC, it was a lot of the same instructors from the associate program taught in academy too. So it was an easy transition for me. And then they had 4 open spots out of 200, and I was lucky enough to be one of the 4 they selected.
I'm assuming it wasn't strictly luck. You say luck,
No.
but like what do you feel like made you stand out to be selected?
Part of it, I think it's the passion that I have for it, right? Starting from when I was 4 years old, it's that story, the passion I have always wanted to do for it. Part of it is showing my dedication in CTC during the associate program, right? Because starting from there, that's all a job interview. Law enforcement world, it's a small world, especially law enforcement, right? You do well in your associate programs, everyone knows everyone. So all my instructors are from Waukesha, PD, Tulsa, whatever else. So they all talk. So I did well, paid attention in classes. I actually got the best GPA of my life throughout college, and especially last semester. So I graduated CTC with a 3.6.
First time in your life, you're probably taking
above a 3.0.
Well, that you're studying stuff that you want.
Yep.
It's the first time in your life that somebody's teaching you something that you chose to learn, not forced to learn.
Yep. So that's a big part of it. And then
what did that prove to you? Because to me, that says that like your issue was never school. It was just you're capable of studying. You're capable of taking in knowledge and being tested on it. You hated the high school setting.
I didn't apply myself in high school as much. There's no excuses. I just didn't apply myself as much as I should have. Right? 'Cause I knew part of it is with how self-aware I was. Like I know what it is to be a cop. I thought I knew. I still don't fucking know. But half the time I still fake it. But I was like, I knew, and I had some teachers tell me, "You're never knowing I was gonna be a cop." They're like, "Oh, if you follow that, you're never gonna use this." So then, if a teacher tells you that, why the fuck are you gonna listen, right? Especially as a 16-year-old kid. Hey, you're never gonna use this trigonometry unless you want to study waves. I'm like, I'm definitely not gonna do that. I'm not gonna sit there and look at the ocean. I hate water, so I'm not gonna go study water. So part of it is just didn't apply myself as much as I should. Like I said, I put sports and social life and all that shit ahead of high school. I was the kid that was studying. We had a test in high school, and I was studying the class before. Just barely good enough to get by, right?
Which is, what a lot of high school kids do.
Yeah.
But okay, so then, so so for academy, you put yourself through. Do you ever get paid back from a department for like putting yourself through or anything?
Nope.
No.
It's all out of pocket. So mom and then my uncle gave all the cousins $1,500 a year. Every one that graduated high school, $1,500. So that went right into a CD. I knew that at 18. I was like, this is going right into a CD account for academy. So that paid over 50% of it.
That's awesome.
So
how long is academy?
When I went through, I was the last 540-hour class. So it's about 13 weeks. Now it's about 6 months.
Okay.
Because now it's about 720 hours, which is, yeah. Okay. So it adds up to be 4 or 5 days a week for 6 months. For me, it was 5 days a week for about 12, 13 weeks.
Okay.
So
then how did you get the job in New Berlin?
So I applied in September of 2015. That whole process took up until about January and March. I started at New Berlin March 3rd of 2016, but that was a whole process. So that process is normal application stuff, and then if you move on from the application, you do a background packet, which was a hell of a thing to do. It was 21 questions ranging all of like life experience, like name a the typical what's 3 good things, what's 3 bad things, all the way up to what's the time you've had to be a leader in a tough situation, or name a time of...
I hate those interviews. Yeah. I think they're called STAR interview questions.
Yep.
I hate them.
Yeah. And then just like some oddball like life experience questions where it's like at 20 years old, you just don't have it yet.
Yeah.
So it was a lot of like somewhat bullshitting answers and not skewing, but kind of like this situation barely fits. So let's put it in there and make it sound pretty.
Dramatize it.
Yeah. So... like name a time you've been a leader in a difficult situation or you've had to emotionally lead someone. It's like, I don't know how to emotionally lead myself to this day. So how the fuck do you expect me to lead someone else?
Yeah.
So you fill that out and then you get on to the panel interview, which usually consists of the chief, deputy chief, maybe a couple sergeants and administrators, maybe a civilian employee like HR or something, that they ask you some of those same questions and they have their own like, why New Berlin? Why TOSA? Why this department specifically? And all that. So I did my interview. I didn't get it originally, but I was towards the bottom of the list. But eventually when the spot opened up, they called actually on my birthday saying that I was getting a conditional offer. And then I would start in 2 weeks pending background and medical.
Yeah,
and whatnot.
All the normal stuff, yeah.
And speaking of which, I thought I almost didn't get it because you get a TB test, and so you're supposed to go back 72 hours later. My dumbass slept through the alarm for the 72-hour later one, and like if you miss it, you got to redo it. So I called, I was like, "Hey, I missed my appointment. Can I just scoot in quick?" They're like, "No, you got to get a whole new one." So not even hired officially at the PD. I got emailed the chief like, "Hey, I overslept and missed this," and I was like, as I sent the email, I was like, "Okay, well that's done. Never getting that one," but he was like, yeah, just go do it again. It's an easy thing. So biggest thing is honesty, right? I could have made up some bullshit like my dog died, grandma died, whatever else. But it was just, I overslept my alarm. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. And if he's a good person, he's going to realize, okay,
yeah,
I'm not going to judge this kid's job now all based off this one thing. Let's give him an opportunity to prove otherwise.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So
the first couple of years in the force, how was it for you? Like, you know, you had so many years building up to like this career. You knew you wanted to do it for so long. Was it, in a sense, like everything you hoped for? Was it?
Oh yeah, it was more than everything I hoped for, and a lot of very, very much learning. So that you start as an officer, you go through a field training process, right? That's about 3 or 4 months. You're with a senior guy. They watch everything you do. They watch the way you walk. If you walk wrong, you get yelled at, right? So very stressful, but it was very exciting too, right? I knew I was prepared for it because of the foundations I had laid before me with football coach and work ethic and knowing what you can control and just get 1% better every day. And that's what I tried to do. It was a lengthy process, but it was a lot of fun. And then New Berlin was a great PD. It just wasn't for me, for my personality style and the activity level I wanted. I started at TOSA as a intern there, so I knew the activity level they had to offer versus what New Berlin has to offer. And that's nothing bad to do with them. It's just I knew what I wanted to be at TOSA eventually. It was just New Berlin hired me first, which I'm grateful for the time I've had there. I still have lifelong friends from there, and the bonds I've made at that PD is still amazing. The toughest thing, though, was as a 20-year-old kid, hired, just turned 21, and you're starting as a cop. They give you a badge and a gun. And even, oh no, actually, I got hired before I turned 21. They gave me a gun. They're like, well, you can't take it home yet because in Wisconsin, you can't possess a handgun until you're 21. So I had to leave my gun at the PD for like the first 2 weeks of it.
That's kind of funny.
Yeah.
Wow. I never thought about that.
Yep. So you can transport it for like to shoot at the range and whatnot, but I couldn't bring it home because I couldn't technically possess it. But since I was working as a cop, it was covered.
But as soon as you're 21,
yeah,
it was okay.
So it was just like that little 2 week gap of like, you can't bring it home yet. So just leave it here, which is fine. I leave my duty gun at work anyway, even to this day. Work is work and then whatever else. So
yeah,
it was tough, I would say, because you're a 21-year-old kid, they have a girlfriend, but never been married, and you're going to domestic violence situations and telling people how to fix their marriage. And you have a 40-year-old dude who's been married for 15 years asking you, what can I do to fix this? And you're sitting there like, you've been married basically my entire life, so let's just, and the typical cliche shit I've always heard, right? Control what you can. If you can't, walk away, whatever else. But that was a big struggle. And then I think the biggest thing was going from working at a bar in People's Park to being a cop in 2 weeks. Completely different mindset and thought process you have to go through.
Yeah. It's fun. I just recently in a podcast, I was on one of Rogan's podcasts, I forgot which host they were talking, they were saying something about like cops shouldn't have to be like counselors. They shouldn't have to be like healthcare professionals. Right. Cops should show up. They should enforce the law. They should ensure everybody's safe. They should make sure that if there's any, violent offenders that they're suppressed and that nobody around has any more chance of danger. And ultimately, it's to impose the law. It's to make sure that the law is being followed. It's not, cops shouldn't be expected to like have all these extra like mental health things that sometimes come on top of like, people look at you as an authority figure in every sense of the word, not just the law, but also you tell me what to do. Like I'm struggling, I don't know. So like, how do you think, so for you, it sounds like that was a transition you didn't quite expect that. Like people would view you as more than just like, this guy's imposing the law on me, but he's an authority figure that might give me advice on something now, so I'm going to ask for it.
Right. You always heard in college, and you always hear cops wear many hats, right? So it's crazy. You got to wear the hat of being a fighter, being in a gun battle one day, or being there and consoling a child that just lost a mother in a crash, or being there to fix someone's marriage. And now mental health crisis is spiking through the highest that we've seen it in society. So now you got to try to play psychologist, got to play doctor, got to play paramedic. You got to be all these different things. And it's a lot to learn. And in field training, you only learn so much. You get 20 weeks to learn the very basics of all that. So that it is a big change, and it's a big struggle to change from a civilian mindset of, I don't have to worry about this, but now all the eyes are on you, because the actions I take, if it's the wrong decision, it fucks up law enforcement across the country and maybe even the world, right? That was probably one of the biggest challenges to overcome, because you have to wear so many hats. You have to go from showing up to a scene and being a dick to people to control them, to then once everything's settled, to being compassionate and turning on a different hand in a matter of seconds.
Yeah.
Right? And that's difficult for people to do, especially with the way our body responds to higher risk calls, whether it's the physiological effects or just mental effects of certain things that you have to deal with. You have to change it that quick, and you don't get an hour to wind down to do it, right? You could be responding to an armed robbery, the dude with a gun in foot pursuit and car chase, and then as soon as you clear that, you have to go maybe save someone's life, go to CPR, go to a child abuse complaint. You have to change your mindset that quick, where I think that's what a lot of people don't realize is you may see a cop at work or working and they look like a dick, but you don't know what 2 calls they just had to handle beforehand. And they're just trying to find a happy medium and get back to homeostasis mentally and physically, because it is very taxing.
a theme that I've brought up in other episodes that I believe, and I think a lot of guys agree with it, is, from early 20s to late 20s, I think a lot of guys go through their most change. And it's like when men have to kind of go from being boys to men is early 20s, you think you're a man, you're on top of the world, you're invincible. You're 21, you literally feel physically strong, to going through like a period of time in your mid-20s where like you kind of accept that the world isn't about, it's not about you, and the world kind of just moves on no matter what you do. And you kind of have to like realize how you define your own purpose and path by the time you're like in your late 20s and stuff. But like looking back, I think most 29-year-olds could look back at the 21-year-old self and be like, no matter how smart I was back then, I was never as smart as I'm not as smart or as prepared as I am now. That like, how does that for you now to look back and think about the amount of responsibility that you put on a 21-year-old officer when you put him in that uniform, give him a gun and a badge, and make him perform this role in our society that is heavily relied and depended on? And anybody that thinks that police could be defunded and not relied on is simply fucking, like, I don't even know what the word I want to use. They're ignorant to the world. They're just not, they're not paying attention to the real world. Cops are needed very much so in society because we are monkeys that evolved to people that like we need somebody to control us sometimes. But like, how do you like look at that now, thinking like, man, you were a 21-year-old kid, out there with a gun and a badge and like trying to like figure out how to be a better person and help the world, but at the same time have all the stress thrown on you while you're going through your own growth. Like, can you talk about that experience?
Yeah. So looking back at it now, I had no business being a cop at 21 just because of how far I've come, especially in the last 3 years with Bryn, just the emotional stability and maturity wise. Like when I was 21, I was the typical guy that emotions don't fucking matter. I don't have them. I just bury them down and bottle them up and put them away. It's a big challenge. I remember if girls piss me off or people piss me off, I just say adapt and overcome or ignore and override, which eventually comes back to boil down and can affect you later on in life. You don't feel it in the moment, but it really does. So I think the biggest thing and the biggest wake up call for me was I was exposed to a lot of violence very early in my career. So within the first 7 months of my own, I was involved in an officer-involved shooting and responsible for someone's death, right? So being a 22-year-old kid and having to look at mom and grandma and my girlfriend at the time and be like, this is what happened and I'm responsible for someone's death. It's a big responsibility knowing that. It was difficult at first because I had to look at them and they're full of fear, right? I mean, mom, grandma, I'm the kid they raised, and now he's involved in something that happens to only 1% of cops very young. I had 7 months on my own. I didn't even know how to be a cop yet. Still getting that foundation, still learning how to battle the stress of being a cop mentally. And now you throw this onto it, right? And I'm not probation yet, so they can fire me for whatever reason they want. So that was a big hurdle. There was I had to put on a tough shell a little bit for the parents because they're terrified, right? I call them at 6 a.m. Like, hey, I was just involved in a shooting. My chief and sergeant are bringing me home. That's not normal, right? How many times do you go home? They don't even know I made it home because I was on third shift, or I get home as they're waking up, nothing normal. I go right down to bed. But now you have a chief and sergeant bringing you home, sitting in your living room, telling your parents, hey, he was involved in a shooting. You can't talk to him about it until he gives his statement or even until the case is done. You won't be able to find out what happened for the next 72 hours to possibly 6 months, right? And you, as a son and as a person, I want to talk about it, but I can't until I give my statement, right? Because there's legalities that go along with it, right?
Yeah.
A lot of it, I acted the way I did because I focused on the use of force things in academy and what's important and what's not, right? There's some things in academy you learn that it's good to know just in general, and then there's some things you focus on. And for me, I picked up on the use of force stuff because that's the stuff that's going to get you in the most trouble or save your life one day, right? And so for the background for my shooting was a guy who did 2 armed robberies within 10 minutes of each other. I was working in New Berlin. I remember walking into the PD that day and every siren in the city going off as I was walking in for a completely different incident, but it was just kind of eerie hearing every siren as you walk in to your PD. I got there hour and a half early every day to read policies, reports, just to keep that learning, to be motivated, whatnot. And sergeant pokes us out and says, get dressed now, because a woman tried committing suicide and was on fire walking down the middle of the road. So that was what I walked into, right?
Wow.
Shit show. And then
this is the start of your shift.
Yep. So I rush in, get dressed, and I don't know if it was, I was raised to be a little more spiritual, but I think it's just more instinct and self-awareness, right? So I remember putting on my vest that day, and as it went over my head, my stomach started to turn and butterflies and like going nuts. And I remember that I haven't had that feeling since high school sports, right? So I got that same feeling before I'd make a big play, whether it was a big catch in baseball or score a touchdown in football. Like I always instinctually kind of knew something was going to happen big. And so I put my best on that day and got that feeling like, oh, something's gonna happen, right? And innocent me thinking, oh, maybe I'll have my first fight with someone, or maybe I'll get my first car chase or foot pursuit, right? Because I haven't been exposed to anything yet. And then the mutual aid request from West Dallas comes out because the armed robbery happened in West Dallas for our K-9 that was working. Best K-9 team I've ever worked with was that day. So we get there, go to help them do the K-9 track for armed robbery, dude who already shot at a cop, right? Part of it, I didn't even know that. Our dispatch didn't tell us that in the moment. So I'm showing up to a hot scene, and I show up, and West Dallas sergeant's like, what the fuck are you? I'm this new 7-month-old cop. He goes, what the fuck are you doing? You don't have a vest or a helmet on? We just got fucking shot at. And I'm sitting there like, oh, okay. This is weird. I didn't know that. Granted. And before all this, the most violent thing I ever dealt with was typical fist fights with buddies, right? Nothing crazy, grappling and wrestling around with people.
Not a gun.
Yeah, not a gun, and let alone someone shooting at someone.
Yeah.
And so we get there, I'm throwing up like our plate carrier on that has more ballistic protection. And even the canine hand's like, what the fuck are you putting that on for? I was like, I don't know, I just got screamed at. I'm just doing what I'm told. And
so you're overwhelmed. You just don't even know.
Yep.
You're trying to figure out the procedure, the steps of what you're
first K-9 track, first time being out of the city on a call to help an agency. And he's like, all right, let me go talk to him, because that sergeant and him were friends. So they go talk. He's like, oh yeah, there's shell casings. You can see all the bullet holes in the engine of the squad, or like the skip marks off it. We're like, okay, cool. So we're going to go play hide and seek right now with a guy with a gun who's already shot at cops, right? So we do this K-9 track for hour and a half, and during that time, we all start off super tactical, taking everything super slowly, and then at the end of it, we're like, okay, he got away, right? So we're wrapping up, and then this dog, after an hour and a half of tracking, mouth out, tired, tongue out, whatever else, so we get back to a dumpster enclosure we ran by the first time, because that's where the track took us. Then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, that dog goes as stiff as a board, hairs standing up on the back of his neck. And meanwhile, a dog that's been running around for 2 hours, to do that is fucking scary, right? And even the handler goes, guys, he's fucking around here, because his dog just changed, right? That's what handlers look for in their dog, is a behavior change. And for a dog that's running around for the last hour and a half to go still, mouth closed, neck, hair on the back of his neck standing up, is wild. So we all get back into super tactical mode and super focused. And then he's pointing at one or two, there are two dumpsters, one to the east and one to the west. So he's pointing at the west one. At that same time, I'm covering our guy from a car we didn't clear, but can have the dumpster and both of them in sight. And as they opened the dumpster, the dude was laying in there with his gun on his chest like this, pointed at one cop and then pointed at the other cop on the other end, and while yelling bang. At that same time, hear shots ring out. So I shoot into the dumpster because I thought those cops just got shot, and he just pointed and yelled bang. Luckily, he didn't shoot, because he could have killed a cop or two that day. He luckily decided not to. And so in 7 seconds, I was in the biggest call of my life, because that's how quick everything was from start to finish of the shots being ring out, was 7 seconds.
7 seconds between like the officers opening, seeing him, him going bang,
and then all five of us realizing that, thinking that one cop, he shot and he winced. It was because the shell got stuck in his neck, so he was wincing from the heat of it, and obviously getting a gun pointed at him, so he's wincing, whatever else, thinking he just got shot. From 7 Start to finish 7 seconds was the biggest decision I've ever made in my life to this day.
Did you shoot, were you looking into the
No,
bin?
so I was about 15 yards back and shot into and through the dumpster, right? So there's some justifications that go along for that that doesn't...
Yeah.
You guys
We don't have to get into details. Yeah.
But, yeah, so 22 years old.
Fucking hell, dude.
22 years old, barely know how to be a cop, and now this happens. 7 seconds changes everything.
I mean, your heart rate must have just been pounding out your chest prior to those 7 seconds, through those 7 seconds, after those 7
seconds. The whole
seconds.
time, hour and a half, your heart rate's probably running 130 because adrenaline's fucking going through the roof. You're looking for a guy who is violent, shot at cops, already did 2 armed robberies. Like, this ain't a dude that's going to go down easy, right? So, and then 7 seconds change, and then I worked third shift. I was off the next day because I was going to my buddy's Whitewater college graduation. I was going to go there and party it up that night, right? And then I have to text him that morning and say, all I could say is shit went down at work. I won't be there. And that's all you can say. And he's like, what? And it's one of your close buddies. And he's like, what the fuck are you skipping my graduation for? I was like, I can't tell you why. I'll tell you eventually, but it's whatever. So being a 22-year-old kid in that is nuts. Like, I knew what I did was right in my heart. Obviously, to this day, there's no doubt about it. He shot at 2 cops, pointing a gun at all of us. It's pretty straightforward, but the emotional side of it was, I remember going home, only being able to sleep for 2 hours, and then just the feeling of wanting to cry just from the overwhelming of the emotion of it all, but just couldn't. There would be no tears that far, and it was just that feeling. I was like, just do it already. But your body won't let you because adrenaline takes... It probably took me 3 days to come down from that adrenaline spike.
I mean, when you think of the moments after it happened and those days, is it just very broken apart pieces? Does it feel like it's your memory's just fragmented? Just because that the amount of stress your body must have endured.
So the last thing I remember from it is just putting my red dot on the rifle on the dumpster. Then the shooting portion of it is fuzzy. Sometimes pieces of it come back together, right? And then after, I remember meeting with the New Berlin guy and being like, did you shoot? Yeah, I did too. Okay, whatever. And then him calling our sergeant, letting us know. And then because for all we knew, we missed because he's covered by a dumpster. So we had to sit behind a car for an hour and a half and get a Bearcat to take us out. A fucking armored vehicle to come get us from the parking lot and take us out because we didn't know, because he could shoot through the dumpster just as much as we did.
Oh, but I thought the guys saw him.
They did, so they were backing out, and as they were shooting, and then the dumpsters was closed again, so we couldn't.
So you guys had no idea for an hour and a half. You didn't know if he was alive or
dead.
So you didn't actually. So how did they? And you weren't the only one that fired into the dumpster.
5 cops total.
So did it take ballistics for them to find out it was because did they use ballistics to figure out it was your bullet that killed him? So
they did do a ballistic report, but between 5 officers shooting, there's too much to go over, and our chief wouldn't tell us anyway, just because they don't want us to know. They're like, well, what if you miss? I was like, personally, I wouldn't care if I missed because I didn't see him, right? I'm just shooting into the area he was in.
Yes.
Right? But,
okay, so if I'm understanding correctly, you and 5 other officers all kind of shared this event.
Yep.
Because I don't want to say guilt, because when you're performing your job in a situation where somebody is physically violent, not just with a weapon, but a lethal weapon, weapon that just takes, and the weapon is lethal. So it's not that you guys didn't share guilt, but you guys shared responsibility for it. I should say that's maybe a better word. So, did you guys talk as a group after about this?
So,
and were you the youngest one of them?
Yep, I was the youngest one. Everyone else was 5+ years on, and 3 of the 5 were SWAT guys. So they're very straight and white guys, and very lucky they were there because they just took over after the fact and ran it. Well, 2 were sergeants. Actually, all 3 were sergeants and all attack guys and former Army guys. So they took over well, and then we had an hour and a half just to kind of sit there and be with each other, and not talking about it, obviously, because that brings up different legality issues, but it was just to be there, check on each other, and go from there.
Because I think without a doubt the biggest thing about the police law enforcement that you hear about is Brotherhood. Brotherhood's such a massive backbone of the entire thing because it relies on people having each other's backs at a level that's more than just you're my coworker. It's you're my brother. I'm assuming that was a night and day difference in how you probably were able to process going through this. Even the days after, the weeks after, because you're still part of this brotherhood where, and it's almost like if somebody killed somebody in war and then they're back home and then they're just dealing with those memories and the trauma of taking a life, and even if it was justified and whatnot, they're still gonna, if they're just dealing with it by themselves, but they don't ever have those brothers that they're kind of going through with it, as opposed to in your case, like, even if you were to quit the force and then all of a sudden like have had to kind of deal with that and like not have had them around, being part of Brotherhood in a place where like you guys have each other's back, did that make the entire process feel like it was just easier to handle and easier to work through?
And his having, his name is JJ, that guy from New Berlin that was with me, and he's been my mentor in my career too. He started even before this incident. I'd always go up to him and pick his brain about stuff, and I would say I annoyed the shit out of him because he'd always be typing. I'd be like, hey, I have a question about this. How do you do this? What do you think about this? How do you get in the canine? This, that. And I was like, I was probably that annoying little fucking kid that's always asking you questions. And he says, I never annoyed him. I think he's just being nice. But no. And then we really leaned on each other, and we became super close, still are. And he's, like I said, he's one of my closest friends, and we lean on each other all the time, still talk to this day. And we became very close because since he had a dog, we trained together twice a week and spent 8 hours a day, 5 days a week with each other on admin duty for 3.5 months. So we became very close. We were, I don't know if we were close beforehand, but we were definitely much closer after that. And we still lean on it. And then even the dudes from West Dallas, I still see on calls or text and whatnot, and still close, always there, right? Whether we talk or not, we always still have that little bond of going through shit together that will never go away.
Yeah. So the force brought you, I'm assuming, some level of maturity. From the Brotherhood, from it going through such a big event, something that you said 1% of officers go through, being an active shooting. That, like, how do you can you kind of talk about like that maturity as opposed to the maturity that you've gone through recently with Bren over like the last 3 years?
Yeah. So, obviously being involved in that Soyun career makes you a different cop and a different person, because it real life, like, oh shit, I could have lost my life that night, right? So it made me a different cop that day. So I would say the cop I was before then was probably more, I don't know, soft's not the right word, but kind of, I would say maybe ignorant to what this job actually entails and what it could be, right? It was always you see the shitty videos of cops getting in shootings or cops getting killed, and it's like, yeah, we know that's part of it, but it's halfway across the country. It's never going to happen to me, or it's never whatever, right?
Or it's in a big city.
Something right. Like it's a more big city, more urban, like it's New Berlin. Who would have ever thought? Granted, it was in the heart of West Dallas when it happened, but still, West Dallas is in Milwaukee, is in Chicago, is in New York, right? So just that mindset, I think it changed made me more into the warrior mindset of being police work, and it got me there quicker. Most cops get there eventually, but I had 7 months, and then boom, it was right there in your face, right? And just knowing that we're here to take care of people, but your things can change that quick, and it's not getting complacent, not letting being a cop and having all these good things happen to you time after time after time make you believe that it's never going to happen, because what most things that happen to cops, a lot of it is because of complacency. They don't keep people's hands out of their pockets, or they don't control it as much as they did when they were younger, because they're like, oh, I'm experienced now, I'll see before it happens, until it happens and it's too late. So it definitely made me a more aware cop to kind of the violence that can happen in law enforcement, and more mature that way. And that's what I try to hand down because I'm a field training officer too, is just be ready for it. And you have to start being ready for the worst case scenario, right? I think before that I was prepping, okay, I've never had a DV case, or I've never had this case, I need to be prepared for that, versus preparing for the worst day possible, right? So I think that's the transition it made for me into law enforcement is you have to prepare for that worst day and that most violent day that's ever going to come in your life, right? So I think that's changed my focus to that versus whatever else. And then the emotional part of that, I think, I want to say it didn't affect me too much. It still lingers from time to time, right? But it kind of pushed me to be more emotionally mature because this can't linger, right? I can't let this affect me today because it's in the past. I did the right decision. That's what helped me get through it. Is I know I did the right decision in my heart. I protected myself and mainly the others involved that were more intimately involved with the violent guy and the dumpster, right? I saved them. I saved me. And so emotionally that kept me at just like I did the right thing. It's just now it's going to be the time of dealing with it and having maybe a little bit of flashbacks or a little eerie of stuff. So probably for the first 6 months to a year, I couldn't look at dumpsters the same.
Okay.
Just because of what happened.
Yeah.
I like going out to throw trash out or whatever else it gave me a weird feeling, kind of like a oh shit feeling every time I saw one. And then eventually I'm the type of guy, like when I have those challenges, is full force just to get over it, just kind of expose yourself to it in full exposure. So I made it a habit every time not to just throw it in a normal garbage can, go to a dumpster. Not every dumpster going to have a dude with a gun in it, right? So I made that conscious decision to be like, go do it, right? Go fucking don't pick a normal garbage can you're not scared of. Go to that dumpster and throw shit away, right? To just prove to myself that it's not every time. This is one fucking time. And it's probably never going to happen again, right? So just go do it and don't be scared of it. And so I forced myself to do that.
That's such a healthy approach because, I think you'd hear other people that might have gone about this by just kind of suppressing it down. And
yeah.
Okay, well, easy enough to just avoid garbage, big garbage dumpsters, instead and just use the garbage bins always. Like easy enough thing to like avoid, just like not deal with it and kind of push it down and then let it be something that festers.
Yep.
Attacking it head on and saying, nope, I got to remind my brain, recalibrate it to realize that there's nothing wrong with dumpsters. That's a very healthy thing. That's great to hear that you had the thought of mind by yourself to just do that.
Yep.
That's great.
Yeah, and then part of it too is mom and grandma mentioned you need to go talk to someone. It's like I don't at this point know. I know what I did was right, and it's just getting over that little hump. And I did it myself. If I needed to, I definitely would have. There's no harm in it. I'm not the therapies for fucking pussies, whatever else. If you need it, go to it. If you don't need it, then great. It's all dependent on who you are, and you have to know yourself if you need it or not. And who kind of gives a fuck what other people think of it, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's another thing that incident helped is me getting over thinking caring what other people thought, right? Like if people's opinion may change because I'm responsible for someone's death, who cares? Then move on and fucking they can be part of the past. But all my friends were very supportive of it and supported me. They don't care. To them, it's their fucking Super Bowl story, right? And for me, it's like it's still one of the most traumatizing things in my life. But it's in the past. It's like I said, everything. I did the right thing, and I know that in my heart. So it's one of those things I'm prepared for it happening again, but I don't want it to. Obviously,
yeah. You don't want to have to go through a process of dealing with this again. I'm sure you're so keenly aware still of just the fact that this was such a shitty thing. No matter how much you could process those feelings, you know that they were shitty at the time.
Oh yeah.
Or no matter how right you could have been in the situation, you're still going to be like, I'm still going to question myself. I'm still going to sit here and have self-doubt, which it sucks when you like know you're right about something, but your brain still throws self-doubt at you.
Yep.
Like why would you ever want to do that? Be in that situation again.
Yep.
But having to be like at the same time keenly aware that it's still my job, that if I have to be, I have to be.
Yep.
And like my brothers in arms still rely on me being there to do my job if the time comes and their life is in danger.
Yep.
That I can't doubt or hesitate or like question what I'm gonna do because my life and their life comes first in that situation.
Oh yep, absolutely. And then that's led into Bryn, she's a major in psychology and she's a therapist out at Rogers right now, out in Oconomowoc. But she's been a very big help too, right? Because I was still, up until I met her, was the emotions. I don't have them. Fuck them. I had this huge guard around my heart and wall, whatever else. I always say she shreds through it like a fucking hot knife through butter. She did. And I always knew the first woman that was going to do that, it would be the one I marry. And I just always knew that for some reason. I was like, I have this wall up and no one's been able to shred it yet. And she shredded right fucking through it. She says it was easy, and I think she just says that, but.
Like first date she did, or just like?
So we met on Bumble and then started seeing each other more. And then I think we always say, like, one day as we got to hang out more, I'm not shy, but now since being a cop, I'm more reserved when I meet new people. And so it's a lot of like, kind of more, not super conversative, but then I opened up and it was a whole new personality. She goes, whoa, you actually talk, is what I think what she fucking said to me when I opened up finally. And then just a couple arguments and jealousy issues I've never had to deal with before, because all my girlfriends prior, they either didn't like going out or they were at college and I wasn't there with them. So when our first times going out together, I got jealous just because she's very talkative and conversative and whatnot. And that was a whole new world for me, right? And then I never thought myself of being a jealous person because I was never... I'm really not in other facets of it, but I think it was because I knew she was going to be the one I was going to marry. So I was like, I got a little protective and jealous and whatnot. So
for sure,
it caused some issues because I was like, stop being a jealous little bitch and stop being a fucking pussy about it and try bottling it up. And then it turned into a bigger argument. And so then she opened me up to the world of, if you're feeling this way, just tell me in the moment or tell me the next day and we can talk it out. And so now, just over the last 3 years, just doing that has helped a lot and saved our relationship many times, or I don't want to say save, but it's helped our relationship many times. And now our arguments last maybe 2 or 3 hours and we never go to bed mad at each other because we always talk it out and we tell each other everything and no secrets. And so I think that's the biggest thing in the last 3 years has been that, is just talking about emotions and telling her, hey, this is fucking bothering me. I don't want to talk about it right now, but it's bothering me, just so you know, and then talking about it later. And when I was 21, even 24, 25, I would have never done that. I would have been like, fuck, I'll go work it out. I'll go to the gym and pull 600 pounds and get it out that way.
So in serious relationships, because you'd had serious relationships prior, you wouldn't get into these types of conversations ever? Or like
Nope.
Everything would stay very surface level?
Yep, very surface level. And then I was all well, you know what, fuck it. It's on me to deal with. It's my problem, not theirs, where it's still that case. It's still my problem, but I talk it out now, and there's sometimes just talking it out helps, and then it helps you realize this is actually really fucking stupid. Get over it, and then move on. Versus where I would internalize it, pile it up, and then forget about it, and then it would happen again, and then eventually every bottle has a fucking breaking point, and it would just turn into toxic shit.
I think men, like a lot of therapy stuff, right, talks about like how talk therapy was more made for women. Women like to talk and express more. I think there's benefit to men for it without a doubt. But I think men, like, for us, like, things that work for mental health are different.
Yeah.
And while there's some crossover with women on how talk therapy can help, because sometimes just talking about shit out loud helps. And talking about it to somebody who's not affiliated to your life through your friends or family or your mom's side or whatever. It's just a person who's literally just there to listen. There's some benefit to it without a doubt. Even if you don't get any helpful advice back, just being able to talk out loud. But the point I had with this that I just kind of lost for a second there is that's right. That ultimately, like, you hear a lot about, like, men like aren't supposed to be vulnerable and like we don't communicate much, and like a lot of guys like choose not to communicate in relationships. But like I do think that when you find somebody who you're convinced they're your partner for the rest of your life, I'm committing my life to them, they're willing to commit their life to you, that at that point, I think when you have a wife, they are the one person you should be vulnerable with.
Yep.
And that you could be vulnerable with other people as well, but you should be vulnerable with your spouse. Not all the time, obviously. That there's the whole thing about vulnerability. I think it gets tied up as like, if you're being vulnerable, that you're being overly emotional, being overly expressive, and that men aren't supposed to be overly, all that kind of crap. But it's just about the idea that, like, if you're having a bad day and some shit's going on, like, talk about your feelings, because that's one person in your life that you should be able to talk about your feelings with and kind of have a little back and forth, and not have it be like anything negative from it. And I think that's like one of the biggest benefits to me about marriage.
Oh yeah.
Is I do that with Kearney all the time now. It's just I talk to her about stuff. Things that I just wouldn't have talked about in the past. Or like I would have talked about it, but it's just real surface level. Now I'm like, I talk about it and I say, and I'm willing to say like the cringy shitty thing about myself that like maybe I didn't want to say out loud, but I'll say it to her because I'm like, I'm kind of like that sometimes. And she's like, well, if you think so. And you know, it's like, she helps me be like, okay, yeah, I accept that sometimes like that. Because I had massive jealousy issues when I was young and I would have big issues with it. And I started out with Kearney like that a little bit. And it was, the only way I dealt with it with her is because we talked about it. And it helped me mature so much because I was like, I'm not willing to like lose a girl over the fact that I can't deal with shit that's going on in my own head. Now with that being said, I think anybody that gives men shit about being jealous can go fuck themselves. We are possessive by nature. That is how men are. Like when you find something that you care about, you protect it at all costs. And in our modern world, that comes off as jealousy. But 100 years ago, 200 years ago, things that come off as jealousy came off as totally normal shit. If that is your wife, that is your person, like, yeah, you didn't just let strange men talk to her, you know, like shit like that. Like it was natural. There's nothing fucking wrong with it.
No.
Nowadays, people make men feel like shit when they're like, yeah, I don't want some random dude hitting on my wife. Oh, what are you, insecure? No, it has nothing to do with my security. It has everything to do with
I'm protective and I'm going to protect her. It's my role. So
he has no reason to it. She doesn't want it. Like, it's literally unnecessary. If I don't want it and I want to stop it, that's my prerogative. And like, that is a natural fucking prerogative.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So no, I think, like you said, it's the protective and kind of just possessive portion of how we are generated to operate and been genetically disposed to protect women and protect what is ours and territory and whatnot. It's just part of it. And it doesn't necessarily mean you're jealous. It just means you're protecting what's yours as your woman expects you to do too.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. But no. Oh God. If you're jealous, it means that you look at your woman as an object that's yours, that others can't touch or see. No, it has nothing to do with that.
No.
Like, the world is a much more complex place than just for people to like boil it down to shit like that. But people like to. And do our best to just kind of move past it. So the communication, you would say then, it sounds like the biggest thing for you guys. With the communication on top of the fact that she is versatile in talking about mental health from a clinical point of view, that even when you guys communicate, she's also then able to make sure that communication isn't just frivolous, trivial communication. It's meaningful, and that the communication is going towards somewhere that is ultimately solving something, especially in like in an argument.
So it's her background and some of the things she's had to overcome in her life too has made her a very good support system and a very intuitive person, right? And so a lot of our conversations are, hey, I'm feeling this way. And I think one thing we do really well too is communicating what we need. Like, some things we ran into, we still run into it, but a lot of the bigger things we ran into, we're both problem solvers, right? So cops are problem solvers. I show up, solve a problem as quick as I can, move on. And same with her. And we both have type A personalities, so we butt heads a lot. But like, okay, they'll be venting, or we'd be venting about something, and we'd try to solve the problems. And we're like, that's not what we fucking need. So it finally took about a year to realize, okay, so are you telling me this because you want advice, or do you want just to vent and rant? And so now we do a good job of asking that, or now we can kind of pick up on it from each other, because now we're at that level where we can kind of just read things. Sometimes we still have to ask, but I think the biggest thing that we learn with each other is we just have to ask, okay, are you venting, or do you want to solve the problem? Because that was the biggest hiccup of, she'd tell me something going on, like, okay, well, just do this and this and this and that. And that would just create a bigger issue because she just wants to vent and not hear problem solving. And then it'd be the same thing for me. I'm like, whatever else, I'd vent about work or life or whatever else, and she'd start trying to solve it. And I'd be like, okay, you know what, I'm done. And then it'd be argument or just pissed at each other, walking around the apartment or the house, just glaring at each other for the next hour. And it's like, okay, take a step back. I just wanted to vent. You were trying to problem solve and whatever else. So now a lot of times it's, if we need to, we'll call and just be like, hey, I need to vent for 5 minutes. And then we just sit there and go on our rant for 5 minutes. Like, okay, bye. I love you. See ya.
Or even sometimes probably just like allowing if it's a bad day, it's a bad day.
Yeah.
Like a bad day doesn't mean that something's fundamentally wrong or that there's an issue that needs to be solved, that it's just a bad day.
Yep.
Yeah. Or I'm crappy at this moment, you're crappy. Yeah. Like accepting that not every moment has to even like be good too.
No.
Yeah. What kind of things do you feel like you're still kind of working towards with like getting better at, as far as whether it's like that emotional maturity for you or whether it's mental health?
Still a little bit confidence wise. Like I'm very critical of myself and very hard on myself, and that's part of what's pushed me to get so far in my life so far is because of that. But then I'm also a little confident. So I've always had a problem with speech. I was a speech pathology since like 5 years old and up until I think middle school or something like that. But so I mumble a lot and so public speaking I was fucking terrified of it growing up, high school speeches, whatever else. So I think it's one of the big hiccups that still stick with me. And because now I'm in an assistant team leader role on a SWAT team and instructing a lot more on the team and an instructor at the PD and whatnot. So I think that old trauma and fear and kind of and it's not bullying, but your friends giving you a hard time for mumbling still lasts with me when I get up to get instruct and whatnot, right? Because first of all, I want it done right. I want people to understand me and mumble, but then all I focus on is don't fucking mumble and don't sound like an idiot. Then guess what happens? You mumble and sound like an idiot, right? So that's one thing I'm still kind of battling with and getting over. And then it's gotten much better. Like IDC was rough. Instructor development course for whatever. They did the typical high school. All right, come up. You have 30 seconds to prepare to do a 2-minute speech, right? And in the first one, I completely froze because I realized I was mumbling and whatever else. And then I just stood there for like 20 seconds. It was the most awkward 20 seconds of my life. And it felt like an eternity. I recovered a little bit from it. But then by the end of that class, the presentation we did was on room clearing and shit, which I know. And it was much better. And then part of it is just realizing they're putting you in these roles because they trust you and they know you and they know you know your shit. So just fucking roll with it. And who cares if you mumble once or twice and just kind of moving on from that. So I think that's going to be an everlasting battle because I mumble and I know that. So I think it's just rolling with the punches and knowing you're there for a reason.
Do you think it comes from like that fear with it? Does it come from like acceptance or status? Like if people were to watch you give a speech and hear you mumble, do you think that you'd be worried that people will think less of you? Or do you think I had another way to word that. Like, yeah, I guess, yeah. Are you like worried about it from a status point of view? Or are you kind of worried about it from like people would think less of you? Or yeah,
maybe a little bit of both. Maybe a little bit of like, oh, he's mumbling, so it doesn't know what he's talking about, and think less of you that way, or probably more so like, I've been made fun of it so much for my life. I'm sick of it. I just don't want it to fucking happen again.
Okay,
that's fine. Like I have thick skin and I don't really care, and I know it's.
So it's not just something that like you picked out on yourself for. It's something you've had people, pick out on you or like make jokes about that you just didn't like, and now it's become something where you want to actively work on it because it does upset you a little. Kind of gets you a little.
I'm just sick of it. Or it's been everything in my entire life has been like that's probably been the main thing that stuck is mumble mouth or whatever. So then it's like I just sick of it and. I know I can talk clearly, and I do most of the time. It's just people nervous, and it goes from there. And sometimes my brain moves too fast, or my mouth moves too fast for my brain, so then you just mumble mouth because you're talking too quick, and then just realizing that in the moment and bouncing back of it. And it is what it is. It's getting better. It's going to get better, continue to get better. It's the best it's ever been, especially when it comes up to public speaking and instructing and whatnot too. But it's I just lost my spot, but yeah, it'll get better. It's a continuing process, so I know it'll be better one day, and maybe not even an issue 2 or 3 years down the road from now. But
I mean, as long as I've known you, it was never a thing that was a conscious thought to me that you had a mumbling issue. I've always heard you very clearly this entire conversation. I think you've been pretty good, and there's been a couple of times where you've caught yourself. You said something a little fast and slowed down and said it. But it happened, I think, once or twice. It's like, yeah, I didn't. So I never even knew it was a thing that you had or had gone through. So, you've obviously made improvements enough that, from a stranger's point of view, 10 years ago, I had no idea that it was an issue you dealt with. Was it really bad when you were young?
Yeah. So I had an underdeveloped jaw growing up and whatnot. So I think that's where it comes from. And then just part of who I am, I guess, sometimes. And I know part of it too is probably it's, since I've always struggled with it and that's what I focus on most, it's probably a lot bigger deal than in my head and to myself than it is for outside people, right? So
yeah,
when I talk to people, people may not even notice. It's just, I notice and I know. So it's how, like, just like when lifting, when something feels heavy, and Kirk will tell you, it looks a lot better than it feels. It's kind of, I think it's the same thing of, it's a bigger deal to me than it is to everyone else. And just tackling that is an issue in of itself, but it's gotten a lot better and it's much better than it's ever been. So a lot to look back on, and now knowing that it's the best it's ever been, it's just going to get better is fine. So
yeah. And I'm sure every time you put yourself in a situation where you got to give a speech and you're just getting that much better at it.
Yep.
Yeah.
And the nerves come from, obviously, just talking in front of people is nerve wracking. No matter who you are, you be like Jerry Habanek from the gym. Best instructor there ever is, but he still gets nervous every time he has to teach. You never fucking know because he's so good at it.
Yeah.
But he's great at it. And then part of it, I think another too is I'm an instructor for a reason, and I know that. But when you're up there, you're like, I want to sound good and know what I'm talking about. But it's also, I grew up around teams and team sports, and one of the struggles I still battle with is like seniority in teams, right? So the senior guys at the PD, I'm like, okay, they know more than me. Maybe some guys do, some guys don't, but it's like, they've done this for 20 years. I've done it for 8 years. How am I going to tell them how to do something when they've done it probably 10 times more than me? And just getting over that little barrier of knowing you're up there for a reason and they're going to listen to you because you are respected at the PD and whatnot too. And it's tough because I give more respect to senior guys that I respect, obviously, more too. So it's like, they say something that's so different than me. I was like, fuck, I should have thought of that, or that's why they're better. But it's not, and it's just all relative, right? And it's all the things, little battles you pick up on in your head and make sure make it a bigger deal than it ever needs to be.
Well, because we're all kind of going through imposter syndrome 24/7 to some level or not. Like, no matter what career, what you do, you're all like, we're all just trying to like put our best foot forward every day and pretend like we know what we're doing as well as we can. And some of us know very well in certain things. Some of us don't know as well as other things. But at the end of the day, like, we are all just little kids that grew up to be adults, and now we're specialized in this one career, and somebody out there doesn't know the things I know, and I can teach them.
Oh yeah.
Or I could be the person that is the senior in this group now. I could be the person that problem solves for the other young engineers, and it's like cool to go from your early 20s to your late 20s. I think a lot of us through that period go from being the ones that were being taught by the seniors to now we're like somewhere in between. We're starting to teach some young people, but you still have seniors above you that you're still learning from. And you're starting to see like that progression of, it's cool to do one thing for a long period of time and be at a seniority level above others at it.
Oh yeah.
Because men, I think, desire the need for mastery of skill. We desire the need for mastery of skill. It's why we do things like powerlifting or lifting, outside of even work times, because then we want to go master skill in another way.
Absolutely.
Which leads me into my next kind of like topic that I kind of want to dive into from here is, how do you deal with stress from work when you do have tougher weeks, tougher weekends, tougher days, tougher nights? What kind of outlets do you have nowadays for stress, and how have they changed for you from younger years to older years?
So part of it too is, I think one of my strengths is being able to control what I can, right? So not bringing work home as much as I can, right? It's hard not to. You're always, whether people I'm in or not, you're always a cop in some sort of way, right? You always sit in a different area of a restaurant or whatever else. You're always thinking about certain things. But one thing I pride myself on is being able to control what I can, right? And knowing what happens at work isn't personal, for all the fuck yous and I want to go die, or if you have a badge and a gun, I'll fuck you up. Like, it's not personal. It's the uniform, right? I think I do a good job at recognizing that, where it is a struggle in law enforcement because people think it's a personal attack on them. It's not. It's just the uniform you wear. That's all it is. It's not the person. So, and just controlling what I can, I go back and look at like, okay, this is what I did what I did, and this is what I had, and this is the decision I made. There's nothing else I could really do. So, and then if it's an external factor, it's like, okay, I can control how I respond to this, right? That's one of the things I focus on is, I had a shitty day at work. Those come. That's natural. That happens. am I going to sit there and boil in it and let it make me be this negative person for the next week, month, day, whatever else? No, I'm like, all right, shitty day, let it hit, and then move on, right? That's how I deal with it a lot. And what also helps is the gym, right? I've been involved in weightlifting since 14, 15 years old. I was either working out after school at our gym or Next Level in high school is where I went. And then I found Kirk at in Winter's Edge at 18, the winter after high school, and I've been there ever since. And that's very good too, because Kirk keeps it as a very neutral and safe space, right? I can talk about whatever the fuck I want there. I can talk to him about work. I can talk to guys like you about work or whatever the hell we talk about, whether we talk about investments or podcasts or whatever else. So it's just a safe space with a bunch of good people that allows me to express shit there if I need to. And then also just the lifting portion of it, right? There's nothing for me and guys that are in the powerlifting world, there's nothing better if you're going through a bad day than getting under a fucking squat rack with 400 pounds on it and destroying it and being like, that's therapeutic in and of itself, or just moving, right? Just moving in general, walking, running, stretching, just lifting in general. That's probably one of my biggest stress reliefs is doing that. And I know if I miss the gym for more 3 or 4 days, I can feel kind of the stress and maybe anxiety or something else just kind of building up. Like I need to go do the movement, or even if it's just walking around outside, just doing something to move to get rid of that. So I think that's part of the biggest escape for me is just lifting and moving and using that portion of it. Now started the journey of Jiu-Jitsu, which is a whole different fucking game and a whole different world of fitness and cardio and learning everything and being more strategic with it, which is a challenge for me because I've never been the strategic type or the touch athlete. So, because Jiu-Jitsu is a lot of that, right? You got to have touch and strategy. Like this person's trying to do this to me, so now I have to sneak around and do this to them or whatever else. So that's a big struggle for me because I was always I was strong and powerful, so I just run headfirst into everything, and I use my power, and now it's got to mix with touch and whatnot. So I love it. It's a never-ending journey, and that's another good escape because it forces you to problem solve in the moment while some other fucking dude's breathing heavy on you and using their weight to try to tire you out.
Gets you comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's one thing I picked up a lot on lately too, whether it's David Goggins' podcast, Rogan, Cam Haynes, just different podcasts I listen to, is picking up on and doing things that make you uncomfortable, right? So one of those things, I wanted to do Jiu-Jitsu for years. Probably 6 years ago I wanted to, but I wasn't ready to yet for whatever reason, because I was using fear and hiding behind the fear of it. But now that I've done it, it's uncomfortable and it's very humbling, and I love it. I love it. Like I could go find a place where I could roll with all white belts that I destroy. I wouldn't like that because you don't learn from that. I love rolling with the higher belts because you get your ass kicked and then you get humble and then you learn different things from them. But starting to expose myself more to the harder things like Jiu-Jitsu, more cardio, things I hate. And if I don't want to do cardio that day, I force myself to do it because it's difficult. No one fucking likes it, right? But whether I go run or walk or put a weight vest on and walk for 30 minutes and get bored as shit, but push yourself through it because it's uncomfortable for me. And
but it pays back.
Yep.
Big dividends.
Yep. And so one thing I'm going to start doing in summer, and I'm going to build a place for it, and we just bought a house in September, I'm going to build a place for it or find a place for it, is ice baths, right? It's a trend or whatever. I want to do it. I've just never had the facilities to do it. Now I'm going to try to find a place to do it because just all the benefits of it. It's difficult, right? Who wants to go jump into a 40-degree fucking tub for 2 to 3 minutes at a time? Just all the physiological effects it has.
Yeah.
Emotion-wise, dopamine dumps, just intolerance to cold and heat and whatnot, all the other positives of it. But I mainly want to do it because of the challenge of it. Like I have to go sit in 30-degree water for however long. That's difficult to do. And that's when I'm excited to do the portion of it. That's why I'm excited to do it, not because of all the other shit. But
yeah. You just want to challenge yourself.
Yep.
Do something that's hard and make yourself do it despite wanting to not do it.
Yep.
Yeah. Do you notice a lot of guys in the department have good outlets for stress? Because this question comes from a deeper question I'd like to get into with you, which is, there's a higher rate of certain things like domestic abuse within cops and stuff like that because a lot of it is said because of the high levels of stress in the job. So then my question is it comes from maybe the idea that then are not enough cops doing things outside work that are helping them deal with stress. That stress builds up. I think there's a higher incidence of alcohol use, especially than like retirees and stuff. The stress, plays amazing. There's a lot of like heart issues with cops because of the stress that you hear a lot of cops retire and then have heart issues when their job is all of a sudden the purpose is gone, but now their heart finally relaxes after years of adrenaline being
just
pumped.
Gives out
traffic stop after traffic stop, approaching window after window of a street, all that kind of crap. Do you see that yourself, that not enough cops have outlets and that more need outlets because they're dealing with a job that's super hard to do. It's super hard to get from a young age, and if you do it your whole life, it becomes so immersed that you just have this responsibility.
Yeah, so I think, there's definitely a lot of cops that could use different outlets, whether it's something they enjoy, hunting, hiking, to get moving, whatever else. It's difficult for me overall because our PD's fitness level is higher than most, and most of the guys I work out with or close with at the PD at least, they're very active in and of themselves, and we don't have a lot of overweight cops as you see in other agencies. But yes, we still have our internal struggles with alcoholism and depression and anxiety. It's a lot more prevalent than we care to admit, and that's part of the stigma of law enforcement, part of type A personalities and dudes just being guys how we're raised, of not being vulnerable and not talking about emotions and being like, whatever, I'll just suck it up, right? That's what we always hear is
tough it out, do your job.
Yeah.
So
I think it's a lot more prevalent than we care to admit. It's just no one's going to talk about it or tell you about it, right? And then it's tough because you can have those conversations with certain people that may need it, but the people that may need it aren't going to talk about it, right? So a lot of the core guys I'm around are all very stable, and they know when they need to talk, and we can talk about it or whatever else. And it's not you're being a pussy about it. It's you're leaning on your brothers and your sisters in law enforcement to get over the shit you deal with, right? So my core group, I don't deal with it as often, but I know overall in law enforcement, it's a big issue. And I think a lot of it needs to be pushed to be active. And I think overall, and I know there's federal laws you have to battle with this, but I think every department in the country, to be a cop, you need to maintain a certain level of physical fitness for health, for the community, for whatever else. And I know federal law trumps that, but I think if you can't run a mile and a half in under 14 minutes as a cop and do a certain amount of push-ups and sit-ups, you shouldn't be a cop because the community depends on you to do that.
Your partner depends on you.
Yeah. Not only do I depend on you, which is fine, whatever, I depend on you, but more important than me depending on you is maybe you have to go to a school shooting one day, and that kid that's in the fucking room that's waiting for you to come save them, if you're not in shape to run up a flight of stairs in time to go save them, that's on you. And you just let the whole community down. Or someone, you have to run and catch a violent assailant or whatever else. It's on you to be able to do that.
Yeah.
Right? And it's not, you shouldn't be 200 pounds overweight or 150 pounds overweight and can't fucking run up a flight of stairs or can't do 30 push-ups or run a certain amount. Like you're letting yourself down, you're letting your partners down, but most importantly, you're letting the community you are there to protect and serve down.
Yeah. It's even, and I'm sure now that you've done it, like I think every cop should know Jiu-Jitsu.
Oh yeah.
Because outside of you should have physical fitness to do the job because the job involves very physical levels of activity. But having the ability to Jiu-Jitsu would, I think, mend a lot of potential issues out there where times there were men an officer might not feel that they could apprehend somebody, but because they know Jiu-Jitsu and they can tell that this person obviously doesn't, they could have apprehended them very easily. And I would never speak on any individual situation because I have no idea what Jiu-Jitsu might make a difference in the end of the day in some cases out there where the decisions have to be made in seconds. But I'm guessing you would agree at the end of the day, a lot of cops would benefit massively from knowing how to do Jiu-Jitsu and control another human being's body with leverage.
Leverage and manipulating joints. And it's not to do the sport of Jiu-Jitsu, right? The goal isn't to choke someone out and armbar someone. It's just be able to manipulate someone's arm to a safe area where you can arrest them safely. And Jiu-Jitsu opens that up. Law enforcement is making that trend towards it, which is exciting.
That's cool.
And I wish I would have started a lot sooner so I could help move it forward. But like Michigan just started something where, if I remember right, every cop has to be a blue belt within the first 5 years of their job in jiu-jitsu. And it's just because of you are able to apprehend resistive subjects that much safer for you and for them, right? We don't want to fight with people, and we definitely don't want to fight with people, and we don't want to hurt them, right? We want to do it as safe as possible, and jiu-jitsu opens that world up to being able to do it in a safer manner. And also with that, jiu-jitsu is a great workout in and of itself, right? If I wasn't so passionate about weightlifting, I'd do jiu-jitsu 5 days a week and be in the best shape of my life just because of the cardio and all the other shit it involves, strength, isometrics, everything like that. You could combine with just that simple thing, and an hour a day out of your work week, or if you do it 5 days a week, 5 hours out of your however many hours in a week, it's not a lot to ask. Or even go once a week, 1 hour a week it would make a ton of difference, and it builds up confidence in officers and just their ability to handle certain situations, right? Because like you said, the public depends on us to apprehend anyone we come across, right? And 95% of cops cannot do that.
Yeah.
Sadly. And it shouldn't be that way. And luckily it's trending in the right direction, especially at our department. Our SWAT team, we started to do jiu-jitsu before our full team days in the mornings and train. And it's opened up a lot of eyes to people, and that's what partially got me started, or gave me the extra kick in the ass to go start it, other than me just thinking about it. And then other guys are starting to do it, and they want to go to an actual gym now and not just wait for once a month to do it. But even the guys that do it once a month on the team have gotten 10 times better just from the 5-6 times we've done it.
Yeah, I imagine.
Yeah. And so combine that, make that department wide, you're going to get that many more cops that can apprehend someone safely, and especially females, right? And there's nothing wrong with female cops. They have a role in law enforcement and whatnot, but it's, especially for them with smaller figures and smaller frames, they need to know it in order to overcome and fight with someone that's built like you or I, or someone that's bigger than them. Because 9 times out of 10, everyone they encounter that may resist them is going to be bigger than them.
Yeah.
And
they have more weight to throw around, period.
Yeah. And doing jits will help you overcome that, or give you the confidence at least. Maybe you're not going to win, but you can hold on until backup gets there, right?
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good point right there, even too. Just the difference it might make to give you the extra few seconds for somebody else to intervene and help.
Yep.
Literally, if you know just enough to roll with the person for an extra 10 seconds, just to like stop them from reaching for the thing because they didn't just completely overpower you and get the gun or whatever. Like it's not even just that somebody's gonna learn jiu-jitsu and is just gonna tap out somebody that they apprehended, but that learning jiu-jitsu gave them the extra 5 seconds that let somebody else come in and help them now hold this person and restrain them properly.
Yep.
And in your career, it is sometimes a matter of the difference in seconds or small decisions having to be made in the moment that can change the outcome completely.
That's what we, in like scenarios when our new officers start too, and we fight with them, when we fight, make it much more tougher than academy, much more tough than academy scenarios. We tell them, you just have to fight. You don't have to win every fight. You just have to be able to hang on and hold out for a minute and a half, because Tosa's, we're a big city, but we're small enough where we're going to be there within a minute. So just hold on for a minute. And some people don't realize doing jits exposes you to being in uncomfortable positions for minutes at a time, where if you haven't been exposed to it, you get on your back and someone's laying on you, you're going to panic and freak out and you're going to gas yourself out, versus someone who's in it, having someone who's 50 pounds heavier than on you for 2 minutes, you're like, okay, eventually they're going to give, or I'm going to get my little window and just wait it out. Or just a little extra 10 seconds to let someone be there to intervene. You don't always have to win. It's just, it exposes you to just being able to hang on for an extra 10, 20, 30 seconds till backup gets there, right? Because if you get in a fight and you ask for help, you're getting everyone and their mother until dude's apprehended or female's apprehended or whatever is going on. If you ask for help, you're getting everyone till everything's settled. So those extra 10 seconds could be a matter of life or death.
Yeah, which is crazy. And I'm glad to hear that it is being more adopted nowadays. And maybe eventually someday it might just be a straight up requirement across the board.
And there's rumors that our use of force board for the state's going to make it mandatory in academy, and then make it like a mandatory thing to be a cop in Wisconsin. You have to have some foundation of it, or the use of force training now, they're going to incorporate a bunch more jiu-jitsu in it just so they have the confidence of it, and then make it more. We teach use of force and takedowns maybe once a year which is nowhere near enough.
Not enough for somebody to remember.
Yeah.
Not build muscle memory around the movements.
2 hours once a year isn't shit.
No, not at all. Well, man, this has been great. I really appreciate your journey, like sharing your journey from kind of childhood and what got you to being an officer. I didn't know that for you, being an officer was something you had wanted from such a young age.
Yep.
But also, open up about what you went through within your first 7 months on the force, and going through something that only 1% of officers go through when you've barely been an officer. That situation, I mean, I appreciate you opening up about it and talking about it, because I think a lot of people are going to find that very insightful. Because you don't get to often hear a cop's perspective on what they went through when they go through something like that.
No.
That it's a side of the story that's not often heard. So I appreciate you being open about it and talking about it.
Anytime.
I think a lot of people appreciate that. So kind of finish off the podcast, do you have anything that you think you would like, whether you would say to your younger self, or maybe say to like other young officers or other young men that maybe are looking to even become officers, advice that you pass on?
I would just say don't let your fears hold you back. Get comfortable being uncomfortable and do the things that get you out of your comfort zone, and just be self-aware and know yourself and know what you need to do to help yourself. There's no shame in needing help, and just kind of do what you need to make yourself better every day, and just aim to get 1% better in whatever it is that you need to do. It's because that's all you can do.
Because I'm assuming you agree your experience is more often than not, the senior guys, no matter what your career is, if you ask them for help, and if you think you're asking something stupid, they're glad to help you. They're glad that you're actually asking instead of just assuming, and they want to teach you how to do it properly.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah, so they do. All the older guys are there to help, and then don't be scared to ask questions, right? You learn by asking questions and going on from there, and just be confident, and don't let fear hold you back.
Oh, yeah. Well, thank you again. And thank you guys for tuning in to another great episode of Unturned Stones here. If you guys like this episode, please like and subscribe to the podcast on whichever platform you listen to, and look for more podcasts dropping out this year. Otherwise, thank you guys for tuning in, and have a great day.
Thanks for having me.
Brother, thank you, man. I appreciate it.